Monday morning, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It is Monday, the 9th of May, 2022, and we welcome you to the program. Trust everyone had a great weekend. It was a weekend for celebrating mothers. I know you might be having a little slow start this morning after all this day's celebrations. But anyway, it's a new week. New day. Give thanks for being here on this beautiful rockless paradise called Grenada. And we are here for another installment of our program. I'm Brenda Batiste. Those of you joining us across the various platforms, we welcome you to the broadcast. And it's a pleasure to introduce our expert talk panel, our Senator Christopher Deali and Mr. Byron Campbell. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Brenda. Pleasure to be here. I'm face to face. Last time we were on the program, I was in the virtual space.
Yes,
so I'm happy to be back. And let me also extend a Happy Mother's Day belated at that to all our moms that have been doing a fantastic job, I think. And, you can never, as a matter of fact, we celebrate Mother's Day on one particular day, but I think every day is Mother's Day for me when it comes to the work and what our moms do and the sacrifices they make. So I know kudos to all of them that have done so well and continue to hold the mantle and guide us through as friends and as children and all that needs to be done on that front, Byron. So I'm happy to celebrate them.
Good morning. Morning all. Good to see you back. Of course.
Nice shirt.
Thank you very much. I'll send the credit where it belongs.
I don't want to comment
Good
on the
morning,
shirt
Mrs. Campbell. Morning, Mrs. Campbell. And Mrs. Deali too. I have to check in to make sure they had good Mother's Day. But of course they did. Right? Good.
But on the Mother's Day issue, seriously, we celebrate, one day, but I agree with you, Chris. It's every day. It's every moment. When you look at the sacrifice, the dedication of women play, around the world, Grenada certainly. But I want to point out a particular set of women that particularly those that are single-headed household mothers, that they have like double. It's double for them, and every day it's hard work. It's amazing how they do it. So I want to congratulate them. I want to celebrate with them. Certainly. So it's a moment for this. When we bring it out.
I think it's if you were looking at it like a job, it's a really hard job. It's a thankless job in most instances, and it's a job where there's no retirement.
But some of us, Chris, some of us could be my friend here. I don't know, was flat out on the weekend. All the concerts, all the calypsos, the reggae stars. There's a little tint in a voice.
Oh gosh, a little husk, a little rasp, because I was screaming for Taurus Riley at the Night of Love, and I was screaming for Wizard and Spice Basket and Scholar and Beast and Inspector and everybody else. Listen, yes, I was out for the weekend. As they say around these parts, I was out like wet clothes.
Two of us was out for the weekend. Her out was quite different to mine.
Clearly.
I was off island. She certainly was.
Right, you were in beautiful Barbados. Well, I was in beautiful Grenada in the hot spots, right?
And it appears the shows came out incident-free.
And they were awesome. No, they were.
So that's very good.
They were awesome. Great attendance at both. I mean, it was just great just being at the National Stadium, having a Night of Love back. I think I mentioned to Judah at one point, it felt like the early days when he started the concert and we were just getting used to it because the sound of the live band and the big sound and the clean sound, and Taurus Riley was just out of this world. It was good. And then at the Spice Basket yesterday, it was Calypso. And, we just had a great time. People still really love Calypso.
Well,
it was really good.
The context in that only the area is that our cases are rising.
It's a nice segue. Because we're socializing more. Right. I mean, we're really out like wet clothes. And when wet clothes out and it starts to dry, let's hit one another. So it start interacting.
So what's the implications there, Chris?
To me, the implications is productivity in our private sector and other workplaces.
The sick leaves.
Because you're going to have, people are not getting sick to the point of death or major, but you're hearing a lot of people testing positive, feeling good, doing okay. I suspect most of them are vaccinated, those so forth, and those not, still not suffering significantly. But for us in the private sector and other public sector places, when you get positive, you have to stay home at least 5 to 7 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10.
10.
10,
yeah.
It's a long time. That's almost 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
10.
it will affect us from our product. It's
It
almost
is
getting
affecting
like,
us.
Yeah, it's almost like when we had the one that was taking us out.
Chikungunya. Yeah.
Chikungunya was taking us out
Yeah.
and significantly affected productivity
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
all workplaces.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
hitting productivity
Yeah.
pretty
So
hard.
it is-
In terms of the public health impact, it is not that negative. As you say, most
Yeah.
people are turning up with, things in their throat and so on. It's not much
Still one or
long.
two people dying, huh?
Yeah.
And there are
in a
6
rare.
people in hospital, yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of those things we still have to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, as a personal issue, I still wear my face mask in public as much as I can.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I do,
And
sometimes
of
I
course,
do.
some of us in the private sector, our policies have remained in the use of face masks on premises.
Yeah.
Premises,
So, I mean, some of us still.
And even
trying
if
to-
I was out like with clothes, I took a corner in the places there.
Okay, your social distance.
Out at the night of love, I had a corner. Alright?
I
had
don't
a
yet-
corner.
I don't yet have the
I-
comfort level.
Out at the spice
for the large
basket,
gatherings.
I
And
sat
the
for quite a
grocery.
while.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
still am a little bit
Yeah.
concerned too.
Because when I went to Vaughan show, I forget myself. I ended up right up in front of the stage. I was up in it, I called to Boise, and then I look around and like, "Ah," and I started back.
Yes, I
So
just-
you could get a little carried
Yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah.
So we just have to be really, really careful. But for the most part, it's just really great to see people out again, exhaling. 2 years was really a long time. We are not built as human beings to be that restricted. And also, my only concern with this still remains that our vaccination rates are low and poor.
Yeah, still.
And so there's still, you just don't know. You know how viruses operate, right? We don't want to end up with our own special strain. So we need to be careful still, And we had 800 going up there. I suspect by the weekend, Senator Diallo, it might be around 15.
Yeah, well,
because we would have a lot of the things coming in this week because of all the big activities of the week prior.
Yeah.
And then, based on how this works. But it is what it is. Just gotta trudge along.
We had to manage it as best as we can, and this is not an individual decision, more so than a national
It's a
policy issue.
responsibility, yeah.
But when I just came in Barbados, Barbados still have it mandatory that you have to wear your mask in public.
Yeah.
Because their rates have
Indoors
been-
and outdoors.
Yes, and it is still, so they are still in a situation where they believe that it has to be managed.
Well, they have a lot of COVID.
Yeah, so, is as a country, I mean, I don't see any of us as countries going back to lockdown status in any
No.
form.
No.
And I was going to say, Brenda, that when you look at what is happening with our people and going back out, I think a lot of people are happy to socialize.
Yes.
Happy to
It's a
get
relief.
that relief.
It is.
Psychologically
It
and
is.
emotionally
It
and
is.
otherwise.
It is.
And that is good.
It
That
is.
great.
That is excellent.
It keeps the stress, it takes away the
Yeah.
stress
That's
and what could
excellent.
happen with depression and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And a lot has happened with
Yeah.
that. So,
So it's great for that, but
man.
at least try and manage it personally.
yeah, you have
because,
to, yeah.
You
As
know,
I
you
said,
hear stories about one child in school was positive and the parents sent the child still to school and then a whole class, 7,
you
8,
can't
10
do that. If
people
you're
in a class
positive, you need to,
getting positive,
you need to,
so
full
we need to
disclosure.
be responsible
Yeah.
about what we do with these
So the
things.
promotion and
You
the
feel sick,
advocacy.
stay at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
come to work and
So we have
and-
that. So
yeah.
we just to let our people know that it isn't gone. It's
No.
still here with us. Yes, we're managing it, but
Yeah.
be careful.
Ain't going away for a bit.
Chris, of course, we operate here, and there are international things that affect us. The war is still on. In fact, it's dominated by the international news. And more for us, we're concerned about the implications. We know it relates to a lot of our imports, food in particular, staples, costs are rising, But I think about, Chris, the facts of war, and all war is good, and this war should end immediately, one could say.
You
But
say all war is good?
no, all war are bad, They're not good. All wars are not good
Yeah.
because
Meant
they're
to say not
destructive.
good.
Nobody wins in a war.
Nobody wins in a war.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, my analysis of this is that, and I take this from the revolution, we had a war here. And there's 4 elements of war, Chris. There's the people. You need an army, you need people. You need money, armaments. You need intelligence and propaganda. And I submit that Ukraine is providing primarily the people, the force, But who's providing the armaments, the billions? The U.S. just approved $33 billion towards the war effort.
The US
They're providing
NATO and so on.
They're providing a significant amount of NATO, the intelligence and the propaganda. So I wonder, what is the interest of NATO and the U.S. to end this war? Is it in their interest? Of course, $33 billion is important for the U.S. economy. The armament industry is on a boom, it's a rise. So there's the economic aspect. And I wonder to what extent that the NATO and the U.S. is fighting a war against Russia. Are we going back into a Cold War? Are the objectives to diminish Russia's power? I wonder about where are the forces to end the war?
Well, I was listening recently to a BBC News magazine program, and one of the persons on the program was saying, there is no winner in a war, as we said.
Yeah,
and this war is having far-reaching implications in terms of economies and inflation and what is happening. And I think the IMF and the World Bank just announced that the economic outlook for 2022 is going to be subdued due to this war, and growth is going to be subdued in particular. So it does have international proportions, but the issue is, how is this war going to end? And is there an end in sight based on the players? So you have Mr. Putin on one side that is very focused on what he wants to achieve, and then you have the rest of the world on the other side that is believe that what he's doing is not the correct thing to do. But in most wars, you will have a lot of diplomatic efforts happening in the background to try and end it, and a lot of mediation, and a lot of things happening in the back to try. This one in particular don't seem to have that, and that is
it quiet, you think? Are there secret talks?
You're not even hearing about any kind of talks or any envoys being dispatched, because the rhetoric has gotten to a point where it's very polar. And it is very concerning, because when you listen to Secretary General of the UN, who tends to understand that you need to have that discussion, he seems to be very, very concerned as to where this is heading, and the length of time and the casualties that we're going to have, human and otherwise. So it is very concerning from that point of view, and for us, of course.
The implications
is
for the world.
Shortages. High prices, and that will continue.
We're living it. We're living it.
And I mean, in my industry and in a lot of industries, logistically getting stuff to Grenada, you could get, but it is so unreliable. You have a container that's supposed to come this week. They drop it, they leave it. It takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so the cost is in the background now. We have to overstock. To prepare to supply customers. So if I used to bring in a container of cheese, I might have to bring in 2 containers of cheese. But we're storing the next container. So we had to get additional storage. A lot of that is happening in the background. So when
so your operating costs are going up.
And when customers see prices going up, not only from cross-border increases, but we have other operational issues where increases are happening, and it's difficult to manage and not pass on some, because if you don't, your businesses will suffer, and at the end of the day, staff will suffer, and the ordinary person will suffer.
It's starting to feel like the issue is really not the issue with this war. Because when you examine everything that on the Russian side, and then you examine what the world players are saying, it seems like somewhere in the muddle there, what it is really lost, and it's starting to feel like the issue is really not the issue, and it's really impacting the world negatively.
Countries like Saudi Arabia and China and so on, who are big.
India also.
Who buy a lot of armaments from the USSR and the Soviet Union, and they are not as adamant to do certain things as the other Western countries and Europe. So you have a lot of international shifting of the players and the knobs, and it's really, for us, the longer it stays, is the worse it becomes.
And is there energy implications? Because if Europe, not if, but when they cut off all supplies from USSR, from Russia, they're going to get it from somewhere else.
And the other
obviously the underworld is now you're strengthening the underworld.
And the other significant thing about this war, it's pushing environmental issues to the back.
Oh yes, well.
And that is an emergency that we have no in the world.
When will we get it right,
So it is really concerning from that point of view. And we head into hurricane season from next month.
That's correct.
And we have to also be careful.
3 weeks.
Actually, we had something that just formed a little off the coast of Africa.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
So here it is now. We're getting into that emergency type environment, and we have all these stresses with supply and demand and logistics and so on. complicate our lives even further.
Yes.
Talk about shifting though. Let's land the boat home. For the last 3 weeks, we have seen lots of things have been forwarded to me. All these headlines about the RGPF. No.
RGPF. Yeah, he gets excited with the politics.
You miss me, right? You miss me. I know. Right, so we'll go there soon. But we go in there kinda, because I think when we get to the RGPF, you might find our way segueing into the big P. Right, so we've had these national stories coming up about issues in the RGPF. We've seen that fraternizing and sexual harassment and so on. Questions about many things that are appearing in local print media more than anywhere else. Your thoughts on this? Have you reviewed it? Have you, I was telling Senator, I was saying off air that I think the RGPF has some plumbing issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of leaks. Around the place. And the leaks seem to come from some main arteries of the pipes.
Yeah.
So we need some special.
My view is that sexual harassment of any type is not something that you can condone.
Absolutely.
And support in any form.
Nope.
And we know we must understand sexual harassment happens both ways. It's not male to female only; it's female to male as well.
That's true as well.
In an organization, military and paramilitary, rank is an important aspect of that organization and the management. And officers in a higher rank to junior officers will impart orders and impart probably other things that may be interpreted one way or the other. So we also have to be careful. But I want to say first off that when you look at who heads the RGPF and the personalities are there, I know from personal interaction with these gentlemen that they are extremely highly professional and well qualified. And I don't believe, I won't put my neck on a block for anybody, but I certainly won't believe that they will condone anything like that. And then the other part of this issue with sexual harassment in the police force is that how is that impacting the operational efficiency of the force? I don't see it being significantly impacting, because when you look at our statistics and how police handles crime and what is happening in Grenada, we still have a very safe destination based on the umbrella way in which our police force and security forces keep crime under control. So I think you have to also look at the impact, if it's having an impact on how they perform and the efficiencies. So that is one. And then at the end of the day, we cannot stop relationships in organizations of that type. Even in private sector, public sector, male, female will get together, some get married, some have relationships, some may end not so good, and people say a lot of wrong things. But at the end of the day, once it's not a situation where you are using your position of power or whatever to impact or suffer somebody else who is lower than you, then it's, you don't have an issue, but you can't stop relationships between human beings.
Yeah, what you would try to do is just curtail the personal interactions at work and so on, and you'll try to keep out upper management being involved with staff and all of that. But the RGPF, many marriages, families have come from, people meet. They spend so much time together, and by the very nature of who we are, those interactions will create intimate partner relationships, But if you have higher level, because that's the thing, as a woman and as a young man in something like the RGPF, you really, if sometimes it's not even what a person says, it's what's implied. It's how you feel, that sort of thing. So if you figure that somebody powerful is kind of making you feel uncomfortable, you see, that's where it starts. It's no mainline definition, it's an examining of every case and behavior.
The line gets blurred because in that type of organization, senior officers give instructions that you are expected to follow.
Correct.
It's different like in the private sector. Yes, I could give an instruction, but you have more freedom to
let's rank and file too.
That's right.
So Chris, I want to agree with you that with any type of sexual harassment is wrong, and in fact it is a crime, and the police force is there to uphold the law. So I think what I think is important here is that it was brought to the fore. in an open, transparent way. Nobody hid it under the carpet, you know, for a discussion.
And you're addressing it.
Yeah, and addressing it.
Yeah.
Set up committees, set up, you know, point where persons who feel they've been harassed can go to. So there's a point for discussions, and that's important. That is a fundamental and important move. So any attempt to politicize it, and you know, make fun out of it should be discarded. That is wrong. And I really kudos to the force in the manner in which they have gone forward with it.
Well, again, as I said earlier, I think our force is managed by highly trained, highly professional individuals.
Right.
You know, and I think, of course, the commissioner's approach to this has been the correct one.
Yeah.
You listen.
Yeah.
We had a closed door meeting.
Yeah.
Then he spoke to the press, letting them know what the decisions are, how we're moving forward with this.
Yeah.
And I think that is the appropriate way to do it.
And we've seen that approach, talking about leadership there, even with the incident at sea, that you have multiple independent inquiries, investigations into it. This is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Unfortunately, the emotions and the politics get intermixed, especially in this environment,
Human
silly
nature.
season time.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's unfortunate when you see some of the stories in print media, where they're heading with this from a political standpoint. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Let's just go back, Senator Deali, to your point of qualified, well-trained at the top, right? So that's a cream, right? And then we just go down a little into the coffee. What's going on in the coffee is important, because we may very well have a divorcing, if you will, of the cream versus the coffee. You see, like anywhere else, the RGPF have a culture, and that is probably what is hitting now. Because there we are, you know, this organization is changing, you know, more qualified men, more well-trained men. I mean, the commissioner is a highly trained and world-class citizen, first world-trained, and I think that is what he brings to the RGPF, right? His leadership and all of that. And of course, the other DCPs, ACPs, even there are constables now with their masters and bachelors and all of that sort of thing. But we still have an organization that have a culture. And you see, the culture may be just, you see? So we need to get on a course where we are moving here. And that is probably part of their challenges now.
The reality is they come from a historical culture of the police force, you know. We know in local parents, anywhere police officers transfer, they have kids here and so on. So you come from that kind of sexual
police
orientation,
officers, they serve the nation in every way.
Yes. And to change culture is never a simple thing.
No, it's human behavior.
And it's going to take a time.
It's human behavior.
As you say, as you filter down and you come 2 steps down into the organization at the supervisory level, at the inspectorate level, assistant inspectors and sergeants and so on. That is where the challenge becomes. How to ensure that the policies and procedures that we put in place to deal with this is constantly enforced and looked at, and they're trained to deal with it.
Absolutely.
Don't underestimate the importance of training also.
Training and coaching
we saw
is
some
important.
incidents where, you know, the emotions, and they're human beings, they can get emotional, they can react. So that training and professional development, capacity building should be constant. And I think also, you know, we need to give the importance and the respect to the force, and from the state level in terms of their facilities, the level of accommodation and working environment. We have to look at this and ensure that they have the right amount of resources to do the best job possible. But I agree with you, Chris, the leadership here is professional.
Let me tell you something, Byron. You know, when you look at what has happened in the force in the last 5 years, and the digitizing of the force, you know, I am always impressed. You know, years ago, you go into a police station, they sit down between a big diary, in front of a big diary, to take
now
information.
You
know, everybody,
Listen,
you know, it is amazing
I always point people to
how we have
this.
transitioned as well.
I always point people to this simple thing. Years ago, when a police shows up for an interview on camera, you're normally cringing, or you have some little funny thing to take away. Not anymore. When any officer steps to a mic to speak, to present, you know, it is professional, it is fluid, it is, you know, and that just goes to show how they, and that's why I say, you know, you might be moving academically, but you're in a whirlpool of things that, you know, it's not aligning so to speak. And at the end of the day, yes, there are ranks, yes, there are qualifications, but we're human beings. And what you're really managing is human behavior. And that's where your point of training and coaching is so important, because what science, training, reinforcement, coaching does is that when you have your visceral human reaction to something, it reminds you, I need to delay my reaction time and go into what I have been trained or thought to do.
And it creates issues for us, Brenda, and even outside of the police force. Sometimes our women and our men don't know how to interact with each other because of all of these sexual harassment things and processes and so on.
Correct.
So I see somebody I like, woman, and she wants to give me a signal that I'm interested, but she can't do it at work, or she's afraid to do it because if she winks she eye for me, she might say, Jesus Christ, I might be called across, and vice versa. So it becomes difficult for ordinary humans to interact in this
It
new
really
environment.
does. It really
because
does.
You and I know from when we were young people how we did certain things and so on. So it is a difficult environment for the men and women of today, whether it's in the police force or otherwise, to get, give signals to each other that there's interest one way or the other.
And in the digital space, it's tough. And even harder for you men, because I think people into things now where they share voice notes, they share pictures, they screenshot. You really have to be careful, because when you're sending a text, remember, all I have is the value of the words you are saying to me, and I may receive it in a particular way. I am not there with you to see your eyes, to see your reaction, to figure, okay, there's feeling they're trying something. It's a feeling you're just getting.
It's a feeling.
It's not all you're just saying, you just get a feeling. So I'm not there, right, I am not there to witness that. So you just have to be, because it's crazy out there. But before we leave the RGPF, do you believe, all right, do you believe for any, and in any small way, that there is a concerted effort of destabilization? It's probably targeted at the top brass and maybe lands at the feet of the commissioner. Well, do you believe for a minute? Because you see, there might be all of this happening to get to this target, eh? So do you believe for any minute that we have this going on?
Let me answer it this way. In any organization, in mine in particular, if there's an issue, the boss takes the rap. Because the boss is
head
the one
honcho
that has to ensure that things are done in a proper way and so on. So it will fall at the feet of the commissioner. What is important is how the commissioner or any person in leadership handles it. And how they...
Is he a target though?
What they put in... You will always be a target. Always.
He's a leader.
Yeah. And they will target you whether it's politically or otherwise. His job is highly political as well, so you know there will be some of that. But at the end of the day, it's how you handle the current issue and what you put in place to deal with it going in the future.
Right.
And I think he has done an excellent job, and it shows his professionalism.
And based on the information in the public sphere, because remember I said it's a plumbing problem, a lot of leaking going on. Do you think he should be concerned about his inner circle?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Confidentiality and other factors are important. But just one point before we close. What a fundamental factor that's changed there, Chris, is that the force is now recruiting significantly more women compared to in the past.
Yes.
So this is something that is new.
And our women police officers have been doing very well.
And you need various facilities. You need male, female. You need, so all these infrastructural things hopefully must go in place also, if it's not already in place. So it's
and there's a culturalization we're talking about, how it has changed over the years. So Kerry, before we break off to go into our next segment, Brenda, I want to quickly congratulate our under 17 javelin champion that did so well in Carafel.
Yay!
The young man. It seems as though when it comes to these events, discus and javelin field events, that we seem to be excelling. And I thought that was something that we quickly needed to mention, that he has made us proud in javelin and gotten gold, so that's something we look forward to as he develops.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything you wanted to bring up in the politics?
Because
I know.
Well, it's been a quiet week, Chris. Certainly a weekend, Brenda. But I think coming.
Politics, we should take a break. We have to go on here. The only singing we wanted was Taurus Riley, not politics.
But Chris, again, I ask you this question every week: are you holding firm with your date?
I am.
Date being
I think Prime Minister is going to announce the solution of Parliament this week. That's my.
What happened?
Yeah.
You went to buy him or something?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
All it was
I
roasting
just-
corn. What was
no,
going
I
on?
wasn't here, so I could roast corn.
I ain't believe that.
I just think he's going to dissolve Parliament soon, and then once he does that, of course, as I said before,
But
you
that
have
could be
them
as
to-
early as tomorrow.
Yes,
Doesn't
well,
Parliament meet tomorrow?
He said yes. He said he's awake and sleeping.
Yeah.
You understand? So, and he said the bell down by 2 itching him, so he wants.
I don't
He
think that
said the
happened
bell slip out of his pocket,
Yeah,
and he
so-
said the bell gone
I
down.
just
And then he went
quoted
on to
our Prime Minister,
say, he
you know.
went on to say that the bell scratching his leg. So I started to believe that there's corrosion going on with the bell, and he needs to be careful because the bell might give him tetanus.
Yeah.
Prime Minister, ring it.
And we have some new parties. The GLP is now on board. I understand they're filling a full, 14?
GLP is always here.
GLP, and then we
I
have.
don't seem to have a good relationship with Michael Buttigieg.
No.
Uncle
but
Michael?
I hope they can come together.
We
on
should
this.
find out from Uncle Michael what's going on with
Yeah.
it. Cousin Michael what's going
Yeah.
on
But
with
yeah, I'm
the
holding
whole-
to my prediction. It's going to be
Hold it.
June.
June.
I think if Prime Minister dissolves, he's going to call it in short order.
In short order. Like
That-
3
that
weeks,
is my-
21
that
days.
is
Yeah.
my-
Let's see what happens tomorrow now,
That is my
because
take.
Yeah.
we keep predicting all kind of thing the Prime Minister will do, and he probably was just laughing.
Of course.
Probably just say, watch
That
it,
is-
quote him.
that is his right to do that, to laugh at us.
Laughing,
so-
like you may say, hey, one to
We had an
them.
opportunity to not laugh, you know. We had an opportunity to have
To
a
the
set date for elections,
election.
and
But
we
we,
turned
see,
it
we
down.
in this, we seem to be forgetting that. You know, when I hear
Yeah.
people as be like, warm to them,
turned it down.
Alzheimer's, yeah, dementia, warm to
Yeah, we
them.
turned it down.
I
We
mean,
turned
they say vote no. Even
It's
for the
it's
name
kinda
change,
exciting in this method,
charismatic. I mean,
Yeah,
come on,
well,
come on,
Great
come on.
stopping point, so you and I.
Exactly.
Y'all love the politics. There are some candidate launches this week as well. I think Nimrod Oliver, NNP Northeast,
Yes,
he's
Thursday.
having one on Thursday. And I'm not sure, but I think there might be one in St. Andrew as well
Yeah.
for Mrs. Emmeline Pear,
Yeah.
Annual and Bain
But we still have a
Hospital.
number of, we have
Yeah, it could be-
Northwest.
could be quick, man.
South,
Northwestern launch yet?
no.
No, neither
Wait,
South.
so why are you waiting so long to launch a
No, I
candidate?
don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
So-
at the end of the day, that could happen in a couple days.
In a couple
You could
days, in a
bring them
couple
together.
days, in a couple
If
days.
Prime Minister calls it in short order and gives them, say, 21, 30 days
Yeah.
after he
Yes.
dissolves,
Yeah.
then you have enough time to do everybody and pep
Exactly.
up the momentum and
Right.
raise it. I mean,
My,
I'm not a politician,
my
but
preference is
strategic.
for this to be quick. I'm tired already.
Before Carnival, yeah.
I'm
like,
tired.
let's get
Yeah,
it
we
over
need
with.
to just
Do it.
spread and let go in peace.
We will come back there, Byron. Let's go. Let's go.
Anyway, we have a very, very, very interesting conversation this morning with one of our most esteemed Grenadian. He's Mr. Ambrose Phillip. He's a great administrator. Of course, he managed Grenada Port Authority for years. And as you guys know is that we've been having this national conversation since the ruling on pensions. And there are Grenadians who, you know, just by their training and science and who they are as Grenadians, really want solutions to this. And Mr. Phillip is one such person who is a public service to the people of Grenada. He is we're about to have a discussion and propose a few approaches, if you will, as to how we handle this thing. But we take a quick break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned for more perspectives.
Never in my wildest dreams would I have anticipated an Olympic Games during a pandemic. As if preparations weren't tough enough, coronavirus became a new hurdle for me to overcome. And hurdling is not even my event. Nevertheless, I accepted my fate. There was so much to achieve and so many people counting on me. I had to do what I had to do. And one of those necessary steps was getting vaccinated. Not only to protect myself and my loved ones, but also because I was determined to secure another win for my country. Not even a pandemic would get in the way of that mission. I know my people well, and I know that the determination I possess is not a trait unique to just myself. It's in every Grenadian, the will to overcome and that desire to win. The fact of the matter is that if we as a people intend to come out of this pandemic victorious, we too must do what is necessary. We must follow the protocols such as social distancing, wearing a mask properly. We must listen to the experts. We can make certain lifestyle changes to boost our health, like exercising regularly, eating the right foods. And also, we must strongly and absolutely consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and its variants. As someone who is vaccinated, I feel confident in being home, being able to participate and run again. And that's my dream, to see families running on the beaches again, to see children running on the playgrounds, shopkeepers running their businesses, bus drivers running the roads, and the love and happiness running through the heart and spirit of us all Grenadians. There's no one solution, but if we take the necessary steps, we will get back on our feet and we will get running again.
Welcome home.
Get Vax. It's your best shot. Hello.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back to Perspectives. If you're just joining us, welcome to the program. So this morning we have a presentation, discussion, if you will, of a great Grenadian of, great, so many things, great accolades in administration, in issues of economics, agriculture, sports, just name it. And one, Ambrose Philip, will stick out. So we are having this conversation on the pension dilemma and the possible approaches. Mr. Philip, like all other Grenadians, this is really occupying our space. It is truly a national issue, as we all will be impacted. So he has sat down and come up with a couple of approaches that he would like to present in the national space for us to think about and so on. And just how these are the approaches to pay and the requirements that each party will have in this. And of course, by extension, we are a party, so we should be interested. Coming from Port of Spain, Trinidad this morning, we say a pleasant welcome to Perspectives once again to Mr. Ambrose Philip. Good morning, Mr. Philip.
Thank you very much, Brenda, and thanks also to your co-hosts, Mr. Dialli and Mr. Campbell. First of all, I allow me the latitude to make a comment or two on the dialogue that existed before between Byron and Dialli about the war one and about the situation with our police force and this matter of sexual harassment. I share Mr. Dialli's view that we do have a professional police force. But Dialli made one observation of policemen having a reputation for serving literally and figuratively the various stations that they have operated in. But we need to look at more than that. The objective reality is you talk to the medical profession, talk to your district medical nurses, talk to your district medical officers, talk to your magistrates in the various districts, and you will see that we have a sexual harassment problem in Grenada.
Yeah.
So it is not a matter of the police alone. Police is a reflection of the broader society.
Yeah.
And there is a sexual harassment problem in Grenada, not just the question of obtaining sexual favors without the consent of the other party, but also the question of incest. The question of incest and domestic sexual relations, it has been an issue, right? And it is something that we must live up to our face.
Yeah.
In fact, it is not dissimilar to rum drinking. Grenada has one of the highest rates of rum drinking, not in the Caribbean, in the world.
Yeah.
That is the objective reality.
Yes.
Going back to the matter of the war, sometimes I'm inclined to say, boy, this is them people war, don't get involved with it. However, for those of us who have been tutored and have been raised in what you will call the West, you will see that there has been a concerted effort on the part of so-called Western powers, the European Union and the North American powers, to ensure that Russia is settling. Put yourself in Russia's shoes. What has happened in the Donbass and that region of the Ukraine close to Russia is something that the United States itself would never have permitted. Remember that going back to 1912, I think it is, there was something called, and there is still something called the Monroe Doctrine, in which the United States has basically said, this area is my area and no dog bark in this area.
Yeah.
You can recall 1961, 62, when the Soviets attempted to put missiles in Cuba. The reaction from the United States now was no different from Russia's reaction to the expansion of NATO since 1997. Imagine the Russians doing some accommodation with Mexico to place missiles or to place arms on the border of the United States and Mexico, and the reaction of the United States would be not dissimilar. In fact, the records show that since 1997, 13 or 14 former Soviet Federation countries have joined NATO. NATO has expanded eastward to the very borders of Russia. And all of us sit back and say, oh, Russia is the aggressor, and this and that. All Russia has been absent throughout this whole exercise is for the Ukraine to give an undertaking that it would not join NATO. What do we have now? We have the United States pumping billions of dollars in arms, the United States and the European Union pumping billions of dollars in arms into the Ukraine. A straight case of a proxy war being fought through the UK.
Yeah.
In any event, that is not my topic today.
We certainly need to expand more on that one. But it really is a pleasure to have you this morning, Mr. Philip. Really appreciate.
I missed one point, Brenda. I missed one point. I was saying we need to learn from the lessons of the past. Go back to the Second World War. Go back to even our own difficulties here in 1974. And when you have these kinds of disruptions, the question of import institution comes to mind. This is an excellent opportunity for us to revisit the matter of breadfruit flour, to revisit the matter of corn, to revisit the matter of green peas and dry peas and things like that. Question of import substitution, particularly where food is concerned, and particularly where you can produce crops that have shelf life. Your yam, your tanya, your dry peas and stuff like that. It is something for us to look at, and maybe our Ministry of Agriculture is looking at those areas.
Right.
Thanks.
Import substitution, that sounds like a progressive move indeed. Thank you for that. So the pension dilemma, possible approaches. I know that you have sat down and come up with quite a few things that you want to share with us in the national interest. We appreciate and thank you for doing that. So take it away.
Okay, Brenda, thanks a lot. Let me make some general comments first. First of all, this pension dilemma is not a government dilemma. It is a national dilemma. And all of us need to recognize that. Why is it national? First of all, this pension issue has already passed through 7 or 8 different administrations. What do I mean by an administration? I mean the group that is in power or takes office after a general election. So this pension dilemma has passed through the interim administration. It has passed through the NNP under Blaze. It has passed through the NNP under the 4 or 5 NNPs under Keith Mitchell. It has passed through the NDC under Tillman Dobbs. It has preoccupied every government since the revolution. So while the current NNP may have served for most of the period, the problem is not one of theirs alone. And if tomorrow the elections were called and the NDC were to win, the NDC could not walk away from it. So it is a national issue. It affects everybody.
Correct.
As a consequence of that, I also think that we need to develop bipartisan approaches to dealing with this thing. The government over the last week or two announced a committee to look at aspects of this business. I don't know to what extent that committee is regarded as being impartial, as being neutral, or as taking all interests on board. I'm inclined for a multidisciplinary committee that takes all interest groups or the major interest groups into account. Who are the major interest groups at this point in time? It is those who hold power, it is those who are aspiring to power, and it is the recipients or the stakeholders, the beneficiaries of the award from the court. So I would not appoint a committee in which the opposition is not present. I would not appoint a committee in which the trade union movement has not had representation. In addition to which, we're looking for the kinds of people that the public will have trust and confidence in. Because one of the issues that we have had with this dilemma, as well as with this administration, has been the matter of public trust. Historically, for the longest while, our unions have not had trust in this government. And they can give you examples of promises which were made and not kept. So it is a question, first of all, of how my American friends call it, building bridges of trust between these two sides. So the first thing that I would do, Brenda, in a situation like this is to issue a gag order. Everybody hush them out.
Yeah.
Talking about this thing, because we have a situation where mouth open, word jump out, and it causes problems.
Yeah.
Right? And you have 3 or 4 unions, any of whom of the leadership can say anything and create an explosive or hostile situation.
Correct.
You don't need this going forward. So my first action would be a gag order to all of the stakeholders and parties involved in this business.
Yep.
And secondly, I would move to appoint this broad-based committee that has the confidence and trust of all of the stakeholders.
Right.
And then I would have to make a demand for good faith on the part of all sides. I think that these are the minimum conditions that you have going forward.
Right.
Because yes, there's an award by the courts, but there is going to be a measure of negotiating. There is going to be a measure of negotiating going forward. I do not believe that nobody, not even the most rabid union member or the most diehard NNP supporter or government administrator, could entertain in their minds the possibility of checks being doled out for the full amount tomorrow, next week, next month, or even next year. So there's going to have to be a measure of negotiation in terms of what it is the government can afford and what it is that the unions or the pensioners are prepared to accept. Of course, there is the research to be concretized and to be concluded regarding actual numbers. I have heard figures ranging from $450 odd million all up to approximately $1.5 billion. Those numbers need to be ascertained in terms of dollar values, the numbers in terms of people. I have a suspicion that we are talking somewhere in the vicinity of 11 to 12,000 people involved. Oh. These numbers have to be ascertained in order for a roadmap to be developed as regarding well, it's not compensation, but restoring to these people what they were theirs. On that note, let me raise the area of the mass of the people by saying, had it been I would have appealed the court's decision. Why? The normal course of litigation is that there is a final arbiter. It is not the court of first instance, it's not the court of second instance, it's the final court of instance. I will have gone all the way to the Privy Council with this. I don't know if them 2 or 3 white judges will wake up tomorrow morning on the wrong side of the bed and rule in my favor. But it would certainly have postponed the burden and dilemma which has been placed on this nation overnight. And therefore, I regard it as being irresponsible of the NNP not to have pursued that particular line. And this is a case, in my view, of the NNP having put politics in front of pragmatism. We all know, and we have known for quite a while, that we are in an election mode. And it is certainly not going to do the NNP any good at polls to have said to the workers involved, we are appealing the court's decision. But I believe in the national interest, it should have been appealed, because even in the Prime Minister's presentation 2 or 3 weeks ago, he did indicate that the government side had some difficulties with some legal aspects of the decision.
Yeah, correct.
All right, and had it been the first year after the election, I have no doubt that this matter would have been appealed. Nevertheless, that's the decision taken, and we have to live with it. So, where can we find this money? I do not share the view that this money is easily borrowable, so to speak, and that this money is going to result in a financial windfall and transformation overnight. I do not share that view. Yep. Had it been so easy, then we would not have been worrying about the national debt over the past 6, 7 or so years. Mm-hmm. We would not have been worrying about the debt to GDP ratio, which has been worsened with the advent of COVID and the lockdowns and the disruptions that we've had to the economy. In other words, the question of making borrowing some as an easy solution is not a straightforward matter. In addition to which, I do not know how many private institutions would be able to find the kinds of monies that government needed for this. And if the government, in fact, would satisfy the criteria that private institutions need to be able to advance these kinds of monies to government.
Right. Critical.
It therefore means that you're probably talking about some multilateral institution, most likely the IMF or the World Bank, to be able to do some kind of long-term arrangement along those lines. However, when you look at the doleouts that you have got from the IMF and the World Bank, you're talking about what, 5, 10, 15 million US dollars now and again. You're not hearing anything like $100 million, just like that. And if we're talking about the first round of the cost ladder, we've been hearing about $450 odd million. We are talking of approximately 125 million US dollars in that regard. So I don't know that the borrowing in that regard is as simple as that. I think that there are 5 or 6 possible sources of monies. I have not been able to do estimates as to what they will yield in terms of being able to satisfy this debt. First of all, I believe that the debt has to be satisfied by a combination of cash and other assets. What are these other assets? I am talking, first of all, about the creation of a land bank. And I do believe that the government still has at least 12 estates in the various parishes and various parts of the country that we can probably look at in terms of creating a land bank. If you look at current land sales, there's almost nowhere in this country that you're going to find land for less than $10 a square foot. Yeah. $10 a square foot translates into approximately $250,000 per acre. Given the sum that we're talking about, probably up to $1.5 billion, we are probably talking in the vicinity of 4,000 odd acres in terms of satisfying some portion of that. So can a land bank do the trick, or can a land bank contribute? The land bank does have certain transformative properties in that the beneficiaries of the land bank portion of a payout are probably all in their 50s, 60s now, are not likely to be too active, but they will be able to pass these on to the next generation. And if we put the infrastructure in place to support the efforts of the next generation in ensuring that we just don't pass on land that remains forest, but that the land become productive entities, maybe we can have signs of a transformation in that regard. Secondly, there are a handful, and literally a handful, of state-owned enterprises, I call them SOEs, that are profitable. First and foremost is a national lottery. Second, up to the last report I saw, was the Grenada Ports Authority. Third should be the Gravel and Concrete Corporation. I have not seen a financial statement from them for a long time, but as far as I know, they should be able to turn a profit on the basis of their activity. I am inclined to put a 2 to 5% tax on the sales or services supplied by these corporations, and that can be earmarked specifically earmarked for that particular fund. Again, not having precise numbers, I cannot tell you what that is likely to yield, but I believe it could make a contribution towards the cash payout that the government is going to have to make at some stage in the game.
Right.
Thirdly, I go back to George Brisson's debt service levy. We all ranted and raved about it, but it was introduced, and it was introduced for a temporary period of time. I believe that something along the lines of the debt service levy needs to be reinstituted again, and it targets this particular outlay that the government has had to make. However, we need to that is going to be a little problematic, because we have to bear in mind that the government has been woefully slow on responding to the recommendations of the actuarial reviews of the National Insurance Scheme. And one needs, if eventually the National Insurance Scheme's contribution finally moved from 9% to 11% a year or two ago, even though it was temporarily suspended at the advent of COVID, it is now at 11%, 5 and 6, but it still has a ways to go.
Right.
And the other aspect of that, about the question of the early, or not the early, but the later retirement for pension purposes, is something yet to be addressed. Now, when you are facing an unemployment rate in excess of the official figure of 27%, and in excess of the figure most of us believe, probably 40+%, it becomes very, very, very difficult to say that people must retire later. But it is a dilemma, again, that needs to be faced and needs to be addressed, because it will only have a snowball impact or a domino effect down the road. So there is this question of doing the debt service levy, but bearing in mind that national insurance rates need to raise, in addition to which I believe the government has been talking for some time now about doing national health insurance. I don't know if you will be able to proceed with all three of them at the same time.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of balances that one has to deal with. Thirdly or fourthly, or fifthly, there is a matter of the NIS reserves. In spite of my caution in dealing with NIS money, the objective reality is that it is the only government institution that is sitting down on a significant amount of cash. The NIS reserves is in the vicinity of $700 to $800 million. I am not saying to use it willy-nilly, but I don't know if we must have a situation where where while the horse is tied, the grass is growing. I don't know.
Yeah.
We may have to give a deliberate consideration to a use or to some use of a portion of NIS funds. What portion? I would probably go with up to 25% of the NIS funds. 25% will give you approximately 200 million, which will be probably, let us say 75, let us say $75 million US dollars. And I would take this $75 million US dollars and put it in the hands of one of two agencies out there. One would be sovereign funds that have demonstrated success over the years. I will approach the governments of Norway. I'll approach the governments of Saudi Arabia, and I would approach the government of China to have that money controlled by the national sovereign fund of these countries. The three countries that I have mentioned, they have the largest sovereign funds in the world. Those sovereign funds have not just come about because they were rich in oil or they were rich in natural resources. Those sovereign funds have also come about because they have been prudent in their allocation of investments and the kind of stuff that they do with it, so that they are able to generate returns in excess of 8 and 9% per annum. And 8 and 9% per annum is approaching the returns that blue chip companies in the private market in the United States are able to generate. Blue chip is when you start at 11, going up to 14 and 15% annual return. The kind of returns that companies like BlackRock, Raymond James, what's the other one? There are investment vehicles out there that are capable of generating those returns to you. Of course, the higher return that you are going for, the higher is the risk.
Yes.
But you are going with people who have proven track records.
Right.
And I am not taking no $75 million and sitting down here in Grenada and hoping that the Ali will help me to manage it. We ain't had our experience.
True.
We out of a league.
Yeah.
So let me go to the big league and find the people who could do it. All right? If we succeeded in losing all of the NIS's $200 million, first of all, it is not all of it we have lost. All right? And secondly, hopefully, we will have some more time to recover from it. My fifth point or sixth point is the question of long-term bonds. The problem is I have not been able to get information on the success of long-term bonds in Grenada. There is one long-term bond that stands in my memory, and that was the airport bonds from the time of the revolution. One of the things about the airport bonds was that people invested in it whatever they could have afforded, and many of them did so without the notion of getting it back. I am aware that the airport bonds were on the books for some time. I do not know exactly how much was raised. I don't know how much of it has been finally paid back because the term or the expiry of those bonds is long past. I think they were 30-year bonds. But I think that we need to revisit the matter of 30-year bonds for the kinds of sums that we are talking about. If you look at the performance of Grenada, and you can go on the OECS registry online site to see what government securities are trading at. The highest trades have invariably come from St. Lucia and to a lesser extent Antigua, where they are paying rates up to 7% on certain kinds of debt. None of those debts, from my recollection, have exceeded 7 to 10 years. In the case of Grenada, Grenada has not put out anything so long. Grenada generally is 1 year or 6 months rollover kinds of paper, and they have been trading generally between 3 and 4. I don't think I have seen more than 5% in respect of treasuries or paper coming from Grenada for that kind of market. So it may be a slightly different arrangement if you are going to go long term for the kinds of figures that we are talking about. But I think that there is room there for exploration and for something to be done in that regard. Those are the 5 or 6 sources, I believe, that once we've been able to verify the quantity, the amounts we're talking about at different levels, I believe that these areas should be able to make a contribution to that. I included as a measure, but now I am having second thoughts about it because it may lead to all other kinds of problems, is the question of road tolls. when we talk about a road, though it may be a bad word, but the objective reality is that roads have a horrendous cost in building and maintaining. Don't talk about bridges. The price of a bridge is just, out of this world. And these days, you are seeing more equipment, more machinery on actual road work than you're seeing people. But the reality is that we are all driving up and down the country roads free. And we all complain when we bust a tire here, we get a pothole there, or whatever it is. But maybe it is time that we wake up and smell the coffee and realize that road maintenance, road construction has a cost. And we, the user, have to pay. So those, Brenda, would be my contributions in this regard. Remember, we are starting off with gag order, demand for good faith on both sides, the question of a committee that can command the respect of all parties. That would be my contribution in this regard. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much for your presentation. And now we will take some additional questions and explorations from the panelists here. Senator Diari?
Yes, let me lead off, Byron, let you go soon, but quickly, just to say that based on what Mr. Philip has presented, I support the fact that it's a national dilemma. That's first off. I do support the view that the committee should be a little more wide-ranging from the point of view that I think the trade unions should have been part of that committee assembly. However, when I look at the current persons on the committee, I believe the issue of trust and respect for the people there, I don't see an issue there. And I always believe that the upper level committee of that nature is fine. You may want that committee to develop committees at a lower level that could explore and be of a wider range that Ambrose is speaking about. So I think there is room for that development still. However, a general comment I have is that Mr. Philip presented on present liability, which is about 400 million, but the futuristic liability to the government of this decision of 120 million for the next 30 years, I think, is the critical and, to me, the most pivotal thing as to how we finance and deal with that. And I know I come back to the fact when I spoke about this initially that the issue of taxpayers meeting this burden is what it is. Government is not a place in the sky with these guys who have to find this money. This government and we as a Grenadian people have to foot this bill. And Ambrose mentioned tax measures and other measures, clearly indicating that we have to foot this bill. And we have to be, as a people, very careful about what we do and how we do, because every government has to meet the other needs of the country. You have health needs, you just talk about infrastructure needs, you have social needs, you have a lot of other needs, a lot of other needs in the pie. So there must be a certain balance as to how we go forward and what we do. I don't know if I would have appealed. This is political now, and I know he spoke about the fact that they didn't appeal, and that was his take, and the issue of how you manage that appeal from the context, in my view. NNP, and you could say whatever you want, NNP is the only government that in any serious way dealt with this pension issue. And the combination of giving people after 83, 70% of the final take-home pay through the legislation, or is eventually thrown out because of this decision, is the only government that have put something in place to try and deal with the issue with pensioners in any serious way in terms of people getting monies in their hands. So I think from that point of view, they do have some political mileage on it. And I think Prime Minister said no appeal from the point of view, yes, it's political, I agree with that, but also from the point of view that, you know, this matter must be firmly dealt with now, and people must seem to be getting paid for their services that was rendered in the past. However, I don't agree with Ambrose thing on the NIS. I believe NIS as an institution may have a lot of reserves, but we want to put national health insurance through NIS just now. We haven't done the actuarial review and the recommendations from the actuarial review have not implemented all of the decisions to get NIS to the strength where it needs to meet its commitments to people like me who will be retiring soon and been paying from since I started working. And that is where the real brunt of the liabilities of NIS is from my age group. that's going to be retiring shortly and how we deal with that. They are planning to move it to 65. As far as I'm aware, that decision has not been fully implemented. So there are a number of things that NIS still, I think, needs to be done. And unless we crunch the figures and understand from an actuarial point of view of future commitments that NIS have to meet, I would leave NIS alone. Again, he spoke about the debt servicing levy. I suppose it's something to be considered. We got to pay for it somehow. The SOEs and how we tax the SOEs is something that could be explored. We do have, but remember, when you're looking at taxes, you have to weigh that against the context of the burden of taxes overall on the people as a nation versus the return, because the more you tax people, the more it may look regressive, and you may want to say, how do I escape paying some of these things? And I hear Ambrose about port authority charges, and we have one of the highest port charges in the world because of the labor situation on the port. So do we want to go there again? So these are things that we need to look. I think, though, I support the idea of the sovereign funds issue.
Yeah.
I think that is an
Brilliant.
excellent suggestion and something we could explore, even with the World Bank and if they come in to
Brilliant.
assist in this way.
Yep.
The long-term bonds is something that also I think could be considered, because this is generational.
Yep.
It has come from generations that have not had, and it will proceed to generations beyond the current
yes.
situation
Oh, yes.
that we
Oh,
have,
yes. Oh, yes.
because of the nature of it. But what I didn't hear Mr. Philip talk about, which I'm interested to hear, is the futuristic part of this liability.
So let's go to him on that.
And the 120 million. No, I want to ask him how he sees this affecting the constitutionality of our arrangements now between
Right.
private sector and public sector workers and NIS commitments under these particular legislations and regulatory framework. Because here we have generally a contributory scheme in pension arrangements across private sector firms and other firms. This is a fully funded arrangement by government. Is
Yep.
it that we're going to continue that way because the Constitution says that's what it must be, or are we going to change it to a
Transform.
contributory situation
Right.
and transform it? And I think when we start those discussions, it's going to be even more difficult, because these are public sector workers that have never paid to a scheme and is being given monies as a result of just work.
Yeah.
Whereas in our context, on the other side of the coin, all of us in the private sector and other sectors in the country have to contribute
Right.
to what you want to invest.
Yeah.
And when you look at pension funds across the world, you have 401ks wherever in the US and other places. The nature of it is that you must contribute, you must have skin in the game.
That's the standard.
That's the standard. And so do
So-
we want to continue along those lines?
Mr. Philip?
Yes, I have heard Mr. Diali. The NIS matter is a difficult one, but the objective reality is that there is nobody else, there is nothing else, there is nowhere else in the country with access to that kind of fund. And if you're talking about investing and earning returns, the truth of the matter is that is the one most readily available. So while I share some of the concerns that he has expressed, I believe that necessity has to be the mother of invention, and
Right.
that we cannot rule it out at this point in time. The question of the funding the future liabilities of $157 million a year, or whatever it is, we have to have a massive expansion of the economy. We have to have a significant growth in the GDP to be able to address that. I don't have an answer for that at this point in time. I really don't. The one thing that I did not mention, again, because of the absence of information on it, is the matter of the transformation fund. So remember that I don't know how many of us knew that the transformation had enough money to have bought out Green Lake. But the transformation fund was able to find approximately $100 million almost overnight to buy out Green Lake. Does the transformation fund have funds inside of there that can go towards this cause? Then is the question of the sustainability of the transformation fund. If you look at the moves by the so-called developed countries over the last 15 months in particular,
Right. Yeah.
they are going to shut down all of these CBI operations,
Yeah.
except it is based in London, or except it is based in New York, or except it is based in Zurich. That is the objective fact about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We too small to be in that league as far as these blokes are concerned. Brenda, I have an answer as to how we deal with $157 million annually.
Yeah.
It may be that we devise some way of meeting a part of it, probably 1/3 of it, with 2/3 or some other proportion going forward on a road over the basis or whatever it is, that it has to be something which has to be worked out.
Yeah.
I have concrete thoughts on that at this point.
I'll just bring in something here from two commenters on our Facebook Live feed before Mr. Campbell take it away. A lady here is saying, these suggestions seem in the most part to be to disenfranchise the majority of citizens, or at least put them at risk for the benefit of a few, even if legal to tax citizens to pay pension for some citizens. How do you see that?
May I ask the individual, what is the alternative?
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that the public service has served the country. Whether the public service was teachers, whether it was the police, whether it was
health workers
in ministries,
Yeah.
they have served the nation. Right?
Yeah.
And the courts is now saying that this is true. Where are we going to get it? I'm not going to go and tax tourists for it. They didn't serve tourists.
Right. But you do
So
share the view that it is a
we-
concern the general citizenry would have, especially those who are not public servants, right?
That is why it is not a current administration issue. That is
Right.
why it is a national
Everybody issue. Correct.
impacting on all of us.
Absolutely. And this one coming from Dr. Nigel Gravesandy. I am sure you're aware of Dr. Gravesandy. He's saying, I endorse largely the presentation of Mr. Phillips. I do believe that the committee should also be expanded to include the Ministry of Finance to authenticate the extent of the liability from the Regional Academic Institution of the UWI. He said, secondly, I would add to the mix a revisit of the tax concessions offered to big business in Grenada and to make adjustments while remaining competitive, but have the adjustments be dedicated temporarily to raising a portion of the verifiable data. So that's what he submitted. Your response?
Well, I couldn't quarrel with that. To be honest, my own experience is that government has been too lax in affording concessions and more than lax in monitoring concessions.
Right.
You cannot have a concession to, like the SGU, for example. The SGU seemed to have had a concession to build residences on the campus. I wouldn't have given them that leeway, because we have seen what accommodation has done to the South. We've seen the bursts of creative and economic activity that people who were able to rent to students were able to do. I wouldn't have given them that concession. And in addition to which, apart from having the concession, is the monitoring of that concession. If you have a concession to bring in 1,000 board feet of lumber, you must not be able to bring in 1,100 and find a way to sell 100 for other things that are not, for things not associated with that particular project. So again, it comes back to the question of the efficiency, right, and efficacy of the mechanism for collecting for taxes and for government and payments for services that the government provides.
Great. Mr. Campbell?
Well, Ambrose, excellent presentation. I mean, for the first time, I'm hearing the conversation is moving to the direction of where is the money going to come from? Where are we going to find the money? It's not whether we agree to pay or not. That's not the issue.
That's settled.
Where are we going to find the
Yep,
money?
yep.
Right.
And the bottom line, too, is that it's a national issue. It has to come from the taxpayers, from the citizens of the country. That's where it's going to come from. Ambrose, you made one of the sources you pointed out, and I mean, I like your thought process. You're going everywhere. You're thinking outside of the box. And this is important. But you touched one area which left me a bit nervous, Ambrose. That is of the using the question of a land bank and any approaches at all to use this as a means of settlement. Why am I nervous, Ambrose? I think the question of land investment has to be more thoughtful. We are still without I know it's in the making, we're still without a national land use policy that is known, that is I'm worried about that, Ambrose, and I'd like to know why you choose to go in this particular direction. What's attracting you there?
Byron, there is a view that the national accounts should be computed differently. There is a view that national accounts should look at assets of the state. In other words, is Fort George an asset? And should Fort George be on the balance sheet of the government? Is Grenada an asset? And should Grenada be valued and placed on the books of the government? There is that view. If you're taking it from that view, then you don't have a problem with a land bank. We've had a situation, I share some of the concerns you have about land. We have a situation where land prices in Grenada now are on a marathon of their own. All right, well, in fact, it's not a marathon, it seems to be a sprint of their own.
Yeah.
Ever upwards, constant upwards. That's what it is. All right, we have no controls over it. We have been talking, you and I, Byron, have been talking about land use policy and so on since the days of the revolution.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our last intervention in that regard, I believe, had come from the OAS, but we didn't seem to have carried it too far.
Yeah.
All right. So the question of zoning and so on, I taken it as a de facto, whatever exists now is the de facto situation. I ain't going beyond it. But the objective reality is, you drive around this country, especially since Ivan, and look at the amount of lands we have under Wakanu, under vine, and under bush.
Bamboo.
Yeah.
And don't talk about bamboo. That is the objective reality. And a number of these have been government estates. All right? The truth of the matter is that I don't want to accuse government of mismanaging, but it is not far from that what has happened with one or two of the estates that have been divested and cut up. One was Belvedere, and I know about Belvedere because I was involved in Belvedere during the revolution and after the cut up. And they were cut up into 5 and 7 acre lots, right? They were assisted by the NIS, right? But nobody assisted people with farm plans, nobody assisted people with working capital to ensure that there were viable production units on the 5 and 7 acres that were farmed out in Belvedere. Look at our friends in Grand Bras. Total disaster where you ended up there with a bunch of chiefs but no Indians.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was one of the government's divestment efforts. I believe we could do better than that. We can do better than that. And I do not know that, I tell you, I estimate it's going to be about 4,000 acres to put towards this thing. I do not know that the whole 4,000 or so acres is necessarily going to be for housing alone.
Yeah.
I would expect a significant portion of it to be for agricultural purposes if we put the mechanisms in place to assist people with farm plans, to assist people with working capital, and to assist people with the marketing or disposal of produce. One of the principal reasons that our marketing board has failed, and marketing board has failed, is because it has remained a buyer of last resort. So farmers only go to the marketing board when you can't get a better price anywhere else.
Right.
That's the reality of it. All right? And we are not encouraging or forcing farmers into contracts at a fixed price, a price which is above the production cost of the goods, so that there is a return. We are not doing that. And we have a situation where the average farmer, ordinary farmer, regards the word contract as a bad word. No contract wanted, no farmer want to hear about contract. Right? Look at the
Nobody in
reaction
Grenada
you
wants
got.
to hear about
So
contracts.
when you start talking about liberalizing the tree crops, liberalizing cocoa and liberalizing nutmeg, look at the reaction that you got to it.
Yeah.
So it is going to be a lot more difficult when you're dealing with smaller plots covering a broader range of production. Do you know we have supermarkets that individually are importing containers of produce every week? Individual supermarkets, and I'm talking about, like how you have a country code that imports the bulk of your cold storage. Not all, but the bulk, certainly 75+% of it, right? Where you have every supermarket in this country is importing its own 40-foot or 45-foot container every week, with lettuce, cabbage, tomato, celery, and some other. I ain't even going to the exotics. I'm not even going to the exotics.
Yeah.
I hear you, Brian.
We're going to need another program.
You're red hot this morning, like your shirt.
I just want to tell Mr. Philip, be careful how you say about contracts. You know, contracts
Yes, you
politically now is
realize,
not a
yeah,
good-
you
not a
realize
good
contracts
word.
is a bad word in Grenada, huh?
Be careful what you say about contracts.
We need a demystifying and an education on it. But listen, Mr. Philip, we would really like to indulge you in a part 2. We need some expansion of this, so we are proposing, yes, a part 2.
Yeah.
We are proposing on air, live this morning, that we engage you in a special Perspectives Prime. We want you in studio. I want to be looking into your eyes. We want to feel your energy. And so when you get back from the land of the hummingbird, we shall have a conversation about how because again, I would really like to commend you for doing this, going public with and you're putting a lot of work into this. I think this is the healthiest I've heard of this from anybody in the public sphere.
Yeah,
the how. Thank you so very much. And I know Grenada is thankful this morning. Emotionally, probably not, as people start wondering, really, how much thing I have to pay? Because we want, but we So, but anyway, thank you so very much as you continue.
Brenda, there's only one thing I will say in closing is that our people need to think more
Yes,
rather than react.
Sound
All
it.
of us react. Mouth open, word jump out. Let us think more.
Yeah.
It may very well be that we come to the same conclusion.
Correct.
But it may also be that we come to a slightly different conclusion.
Yes.
And while I know that I have been regarded in many circles as being confrontational, adversarial, and so on, as Mr. Diali will tell you, my mediation exposure has taught me to put myself in the shoes of the other side.
Empathy.
Put yourself in the shoes of the other side and see how far you could walk in it if you could walk at all.
Absolutely.
That is all.
And that's why I support fully your gag order principle. I just think we all need to just delay our reaction time. Yeah, every time I watch a TV and I see a talking head, I'm like, shut up already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't say I support that, but I fully support that.
Yeah, gag order, absolutely. Inflaming passions without any real solutions being offered. Thank you so very much. Talk to you soon. And I'm sure Grenada will be buzzing this morning.
Thank you.
You might get a phone call, Yeah, we need you. We need you. Don't worry from who. It doesn't matter. Have a great day, and thank you so very much. Get back home safely.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
care.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
our great minds
Yeah,
come
brilliant.
up with things, and that is why you must support the idea of expansion of the committee. And as I say, it must be the central committee, but lower down.
Yeah,
And I think that is the way to go.
absolutely.
Ambrose is Ambrose. I mean,
I'm
it's,
telling
he was
you.
very good this morning. I have to ask him about the beard, I'm thinking of where
It's
it was.
distinguished. It's distinguished. Distinguished.
No, I mean, fresh ideas, new ideas, and I said before, I just like the approach, how we focus on how we raising the money,
Yeah.
how How are we going to get the money? How are we get the
And you
productivity
may
we need?
agree or
Expansion of
disagree,
the economy.
But the point is, you have put out some thoughts there.
Absolutely.
That's the
Points that we have not heard. Because what we have not had, gentlemen, is a dispassionate discourse on the matter. We are hanging on to many things. Tabancas of the past, emotion of what is, politics just pervading. It is not. It truly is a national issue.
Yeah.
So that when I see people on Facebook telling people, shut your mouth, that's not your business, you're not a public servant. Hello? Who paid for it?
Exactly.
No, we can't.
Critical
You see,
point.
so, and the thinking and so on, we really need to, the narrative has been too murky. And we really need, this has been really sobering. And that's what we need to move forward on this discussion.
And the blame game.
Yeah, make it really sobering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been quite a long morning.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. I know you're low on energy because the Mother's Day was woot, woot, woot.
Yeah, she's showing, I can't say that is pattern. She's showing TV at me to see what she did.
Oh Lord, I'm a long line fisherman.
I hope we'll have a bit more in politics next week.
Yeah. And we'll
Well,
engage Mr.
If Prime Minister dissolves Parliament this week, then they sit.
Trust me, we're going to have a lot more politics
We
next
will
week.
have,
I mean, you know us. We can't sit still. Somebody won't
I mean,
say
we haven't
something,
spoken
do
about the
something.
preparation of the PU yet,
Yeah.
and that is something we need to touch.
Are we going to be speaking to politicians? though?
We should, of course, we need to be putting politicians, put them on.
I want to talk to the
put them
producer
on.
about that. But
Yes, absolutely. Right. We
I
don't
fully
decide.
support
We don't
that.
decide, but I mean, it's
Probably we could bring in PU on one of the programs.
Yes,
to
they
look at their
definitely need to come in,
preparations.
It'd be nice to have a call in with the PEO.
Yeah.
So if the supervisor of elections
Yeah.
come in, so the public can kind of ask their questions
Yeah, Mr.
of them.
Moran,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Because there are
Something to
common
consider.
questions and
because
you
we
know.
must have confidence.
Yeah.
There, so we need to know what's happening.
And not
there.
only that, for them to demystify a lot of things. Because every time election come around, all of a sudden the election office become this big boogeyman. Because people just getting a little, too crazy. So
Way to go.
it'll be good to do that. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. Until we meet again, we'd like to say thank you to our producers. Of course, our camera person this morning, Kirk Oliver. Kirk did our camera and some audio. And Nathan Benjamin for your professional streaming services. Blondell George, our director. And our executive producer, Mr. Richie Oliver. For Senator Christy Alley and Mr. Byron Campbell, I am Brenda Batiste for Perspectives. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.